What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Breaking the Game show, part of the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. I'm your host tonight, Kenneth Cotterill, and I'm not joined by my co-host, Steven, unfortunately. Wish he could be here tonight, but I know that he's doing well. But I do have two guests with me tonight. The first is the head of the YouTube department at the Off the Ball Network. He just hit, I think it was 1,250 subs. The guy's been killing it on the YouTube front. And that's JP. JP, how you doing tonight?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on Breaking the Game, Kenneth. Man, I'm excited to talk NBA basketball, and thank you so much for the YouTube subs and too as well. It's been a humbling, and I'm just blessed and thankful that I'm doing really good so far. So we just got to keep it up, and I'm so happy just to be here. So thank you so much.
Definitely, JP. I mean, you've got more subs on YouTube than I get on TikTok views. So, I mean, I got something to strive for. I got something to look forward to in that regard. And the second guy, he's a familiar face from earlier today. He was on Bets with me this morning. He's been live betting up a storm right now, but he's here to talk some hoops with us tonight. That is Mo Murphy from the Up in Flames podcast. Mo, how you doing?
Hey, Kenneth, we talked this morning. We got some bets going. Green Bay's keeping my parlay alive, but my little -7.5, I thought that was easy money. And, they decided to play it close with Tyler Huntley. Shout out to Tyler Huntley. But, here to talk NBA, here to talk the good stuff, here to talk about, we're knee deep into the season. We got, a whole bunch of stuff to get into. So I just appreciate you for having me on.
Definitely. There is a lot to chat about. Not a lot on the games front, unfortunately, but we're going to get into why that's an issue coming up here in just a second. But before we get into today's episode, this show is sponsored by Built Bar. Built Bar is the newest sponsor of the Off the Ball Network. If your kids find out how good these bars truly are, you're going to have to buy more. They have great flavors such as cookies and cream, strawberry, peanut butter brownie as well. Built Bar also now has a mystery flavor, and if you guess the flavor correctly, you could win a prize. So head on over to Built.com, use the promo code OFFTHEBALL in all caps at checkout. You can get 10% off your order. I've already placed 2 orders. Absolutely love the bars. They're phenomenal. So they're not lying when they say how good they really are. You got to go and check them out at Built.com. So we're going to get right into things. We're going to talk about my NBA power rankings, which were released on Friday. So even a lot has changed since then. But we're also going to get into talking about COVID. We're going to talk about Kyrie Irving. There's a lot of great topics here tonight. So we're going to open things up by talking about my NBA power rankings, which if you're watching live, they're up on the screen. So I'll talk about the teams on the left side of the bracket first, and then I'll let you guys sort of give your input as to how you feel about those teams there. So number 1, we got Golden State, Phoenix at 2, Utah at 3, Brooklyn at 4, and Milwaukee at 5. Do you guys have any issues with the top 5 at all? Do you think that there's a team that, could sneak in there next week? Mo, I'll go to you first.
No. I mean, it's pretty plain and simple. I mean, Utah's playing, pretty good basketball. Coughed up, back-to-back losses. So I know you might change your mind a little bit come next week, but then they have a full week. It came out on Friday, so they got another 5 days. Who knows? They might not play a game over the next 5 days. We really have no idea with this COVID stuff that I know we'll get into later. But, I mean, Golden State has been the best team in basketball right now. Phoenix has been the second best team in basketball, and they're getting Devin Booker back, tonight. So I expect them to kind of handle business. I expect, Devin Booker to be pretty much 100%. I feel like he might have been able to go prior, but you wait. This early in the season, you want to wait until your guy is fully ready to go, ready to play. You don't take any chances this early. It doesn't matter. Your team has been playing great ball. Even without DeAndre Ayton at points in time, Chris Paul has been able to, still kind of carry that team and get a lot of victories. So, I mean, Brooklyn, what KD is doing by himself. Essentially, James Harden went out. Obviously, no Kyrie since the start of the season. We'll get into that as well. They got hit hard with COVID, and KD was still able to carry the team to victory. So, anybody who's doubted KD and can he carry a team by himself, maybe not win the championship, but that's a very depleted team. But, him getting victories with him and, some rookies and some G League prospects, essentially, has been absolutely amazing and is a testament to the type of player Kevin Durant is. So, no, I don't really have an issue with your top 5. Maybe Chicago slides in there because they were, 6? So maybe they slide in there. In the next week. They took a couple games off, haven't really played this week because of COVID. They come back It's Sunday, so they come back tonight against the Lakers. We'll see if they're able to get that victory with the depleted Los Angeles Lakers between COVID injuries and what have you. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with the top 5. Couple teams on the outside looking in. My Miami Heat, they're right there. No Jimmy, no Bam. I don't expect them to jump in the top 5 because you're going to have to factor until Jimmy and Bam come back. But, they're on the outside looking in. Jimmy and Bam come back, a strong week performance. I think they jump in there. But, yeah, I fully agree with your top 5. I don't dispute anything 1 through 5. That order, I'm rocking with you 100%.
JP, what do you think of the top 5? Golden State 1, Phoenix 2, Utah 3, Brooklyn 4, and Milwaukee at 5.
Those are the 5 best teams in basketball so far. Golden State had that loss to Toronto last night, but they're still the best team in basketball. The way they can move the ball around, Steph Curry playing unbelievable. Getting Clay back. Kind of like possibly this week or next week. They're just playing unbelievable basketball. And, it just feels like that old 2015 Warriors team that's like, don't have those high expectations and everything. Like, they're just playing some beautiful basketball. Steve Kerr gets a lot of credit, and Mike Brown too as well. Phoenix, Devin Booker coming back tonight. They've been playing really good basketball. Not only Chris Paul, Cameron Johnson definitely step up. Mikal Bridges, his defensive efforts and everything, just helping the Suns out, and they're playing really good basketball. Utah Jazz, probably the most underrated team in basketball because nobody don't really talk about it because it's up in Utah though. But the play of Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Jordan Clarkson, like they're really playing some good basketball. The Nets, KD doing it by himself, pretty much the whole Nets team, we'll talk about later, in those COVID protocols, but KD just doing it by himself. He's number 1 in the MVP vote right now, just the way he is carrying this Brooklyn Nets team with his scoring ability. And the Bucks at 5, they're playing good basketball, consistent basketball. Drew Holiday really stepped up to play when Giannis went out with the COVID protocols, scored 40 points. I forgot what team they scored. He scored 40 on, but they're still in the hunt though, and playing defense and scoring, offensively, consistently. But yeah, those are the 5 best teams. A team that could sneak up in now, possibly Chicago with everybody coming back into the lineup. Miami, possibly. Tyler Hill is coming back from that quad injury, so we'll see how he goes though. But other than that, Memphis possibly, the play of Desmond Bane and Dylan Brooks coming back and doing unbelievable. Jaren Jackson Jr. with his efficiency. Memphis is playing really good basketball right now, and that's without, John Morant too as well. So, those are the 3 teams kind of stepping in, maybe Cleveland. But we'll talk about them a little bit later. But other than that, that's 5 best teams in basketball.
Yeah, I definitely think the top 5 was pretty easy. Like I haven't changed much at the top throughout the year, just because like maybe a team moves into 5 and one drops down to 6, but like it's been pretty clear who the 5 best teams in basketball are, even without Giannis. Like, I mean, Milwaukee's winning games without him. Guys like Middleton and Drew stepping up has been big. The next 10 teams, that's where you start to kind of get into it's opinion based, and it can be tough to judge at times because you've got Chicago at 6, Miami at 7, Memphis at 8, and Cleveland at 9. I want to highlight 7 through 9 because the fact that Miami, Memphis, and Cleveland are all winning games despite having players missing, I think has been phenomenal to see this year. Like, as Mo said, Miami's missing Bam and Jimmy, and the fact that they're still sitting in that 7 spot, I think, is a testament to how well guys like PJ Tucker are stepping up, and Kyle Lowry, guys that they went out and got in the offseason. Memphis without Ja, Cleveland missing Sexton for the rest of the year. That's a big loss for them, but they've been winning games. So then you start to get into the Clippers at 10, Charlotte at 11, the Lakers up to 12. That's going to be adjusted this coming week, especially with AD going down, but he wasn't out on Friday when I made the rankings. So I think that we'll see them fall once again. But then Dallas at 13, the Wizards, who have been struggling, they dropped to 14, and Atlanta at 15. So Mo, I'll go to you first, 6 through 15. Any major issues with a team that's maybe a bit too high, a team you think I'm slighting a little bit, given how they've played recently?
Because we're going to get into this team, it's not much to kill them about. I'm sorry, Kenneth. but we all know the Lakers are going to drop. Let's just be honest here.
Yep.
No Anthony Davis. COVID has hit him. LeBron, I won't even say LeBron's showing his age. I can't disrespect him like that. He's actually playing like he's averaging his career numbers, essentially. I think 1 point less as opposed to, but he's right there with points and rebounds. So, I mean, I think the Lakers will drop respectively. Like you said, they came out on Friday. They had that loss against Minnesota, which I felt like was a bad loss. I know Minnesota is pretty decent, I know, but no Anthony Edwards. I felt like that was just enough when you have your big three of LeBron, AD, and Russell Westbrook. Even though a couple other players were out, I felt like that was just the right COVID protocol to hit for the Lakers to take advantage and win the game against a team that's kind of hungry, that's on and off, but they're pretty hungry in Minnesota. So I do think the Lakers will drop. Outside of that, I mean, we talked about Miami. Could rise, could stay about the same. They've been pretty consistent at where they're at in your power rankings, so I have zero problem with them moving up and down a spot or two in the top 10. It's pretty much where they belong. I'm surprised they're still remaining in the top 10 with no Jimmy and no Bam. I definitely thought there would be a significant drop-off for Miami. Didn't think they'd be winning games the way they've been winning, but I mean, other than that, I agree. I mean, Chicago's a fringe top 5 team. So is Miami. We'll be waiting for both of those teams to get healthy. Atlanta, COVID protocols have kind of hit Atlanta, so we'll see what happens with them. But you can't knock your rankings and where you have guys based on COVID protocols because those are factors that you can't account for until they happen. And I mean, what? By the day we hear, it's by the minute, this guy, Shams and Woj have been on it. They're tweeting COVID protocols on a daily basis like we're in the midst of free agency. So when it comes to your power rankings, you can never plan out for that. Once you got them on Friday, you don't know who's going to be available Friday after they release. You don't know who's going to be available Saturday, Sunday, in the week coming up to it. So a lot of it's going to play a factor, but obviously Trae Young being out is probably going to have Atlanta drop over this next week, and it is what it is. It happens. They started getting their stuff together, then leveled out again. They looked like they were going to be back to Atlanta, leveled out again. So they've kind of been up and down, but no, I don't really have a problem. I just see it. The only problem I have with power rankings, period, at this point is just because, it could make you look bad, and it's not even you, it's COVID. COVID could make your power rankings look terrible because people are going to kill you for this. Well, they dropped Friday, and 10 teams have about 15 players apiece. They're playing G League guys, bringing, exceptions, mid-level exceptions and everything else, as far as contracts. So that's the only part. And so I salute you with even being able to keep up with this for the simple fact, bro, you have no idea when you wake up in the morning who's going to be out.
Oh, like even in the time that I could make my power rankings and go and post them, like a guy could get ruled out, and I'm not going to go back and fix it and then wait for another guy to get ruled out. And Shams and Woj have been on top of it. I know Bobby Portis was a little bit upset that they missed out on him. I don't know if you guys saw his tweet, but he's like, I guess my COVID protocols don't matter to Shams and Woj, but I thought that was really funny. But I mean, they're having to keep track of 30 teams that have guys constantly being ruled out. And so we're going to get more into COVID in a little bit. But JP, any issues with the left side before I move over to the right?
I don't really have a problem. I think Atlanta could have been a little bit one up. I would have had them over the Wizards just because the Wizards are struggling and Trae Young having a really good month, in December, the way he's been balling along with John Collins too as well. I thought I could have them a little bit up. The Lakers is definitely going to drop. You can't really, expect all these COVID outbreaks. I think when I looked at the numbers before last Tuesday, it was only I think 5 or 6 players, and then it just became just it just became crazy with all just an outbreak. So they're definitely going to drop, especially with the AD injury. They're going to definitely drop. Clippers probably going to drop a little bit just because of that bad loss to OKC to Shea's game winner. They probably drop a little bit. But I don't really have a problem with the list though. I think everything's top notch and everything is perfect right there. But I think the only issue is just Atlanta might be a little bit higher than Washington because Washington's just been struggling so much. They just couldn't win no games and all that. So
yeah. So getting into the right side of the bracket, I mean, we've got Philadelphia at 16. They've been playing some bad basketball recently, so I had to slight them. Denver at 17, Boston at 18, Toronto at 19. The Knicks are a tough one to judge at 20, especially now that they have protocol issues, but they weren't playing great basketball prior to that. Minnesota's been on a bit of a win streak here, so we'll see if they take care of business against Dallas tonight. We could see them move up. I know they have Edwards and protocols, but that's about it on that front. Then you've got Indiana, Sacramento, Houston, San Antonio, Portland, New Orleans, who did beat the Bucks, but that was obviously without Giannis. One of my better betting wins recently. OKC at 28, Orlando at 29, and I mean 30. If I could put them at 31, I would, given the way that Detroit has played, because they are now on a 14-game losing streak, which is really tough. So before we move on to chatting about some COVID stuff, Mo, any issues with the right side? These are all the teams that we're looking at best or play in, but probably missing the playoffs altogether.
No, I mean, we can argue all day about who's the worst of the worst or however you want to look at it, but no, like, because you might have a slight, but you when you get to the bottom tier, the right side, the last 15 or whatever, it's preference essentially. Like, it's like, well, I see them heading up, I see them trending downwards. That's just how it becomes. And it's like, if you really get to arguing, it could smack you in the face. And so I'm not about to argue with you, because then you'll bring up a clip and then I'll be
but you know I wouldn't do that.
But jumping on breaking the game and saying that I had such a problem with Kenneth's 20th best team in the NBA. Like, yeah, you had them wrong, they were 30th, but you wanted to defend them and say they were 15. Like, at that point, it really doesn't matter, especially at this point in the season.
When you get to 16 through 30, a lot of it just has to do with, like, okay, who's been 500 the last 10 games? Because if you've been 500 the last 10 games, you probably moved up in the rankings. Like, I mean, we know that Detroit's 0-10 in the last 10 games, so they're going to be at the very bottom. The Pelicans picking up wins here and there, same with Orlando. So, like, the top 5 or 6 is going to be interchangeable. It gets tougher when you're in that 16 to 25 range, because, yeah, you do get those comments where it's like, wow, I can't believe you have my team at 20. They're at least at 18, and you're just like, okay, like, fair enough. Good for you, I guess. Like, they're still not in the playoffs, so, like, I don't know what we're arguing here. So that's the fun part about doing these power rankings, though, is it's up for debate and it's all subjective, and that's why I love doing them. It's fun to get those DMs from people that you didn't even know followed you that randomly decided to tell you how good the Boston Celtics are. Like, okay, sweet. Thanks so much for that. Have a good day, man. So let's get into the main part of the show today, which is the COVID protocols. I mean, COVID, we've seen them suspend. There was 3 games postponed today. We saw Pelicans, Sixers, we saw Denver, Brooklyn, we saw Cleveland, Atlanta, all postponed due to COVID. We saw the Raptors and Magic tomorrow aren't going. The Wizards and Nets Tuesday. I also think, judging by the way that the NHL has handled things, where they're not having any Canadian teams play before the Christmas break, I think we could see that happen with the Raptors as well. So COVID's kind of thrown the season for a loop, and I think a lot of people felt like coming into the year, oh, we're in the clear. Like, COVID's over. Like, we're back to having sports. We're live. We're in person. We got plenty of people there. And now we've got all these protocol issues happening. So, JP, I'll go to you first. How do you think the NBA should handle this? Should they be looking to suspend the season for a bit? Do they just push on, have these G League guys come in and whatnot? What do you think of the situation?
I know they're trying to work on, like, the people that tested positive that don't really have any symptoms to continue playing. I think what it comes down to is just money, because if you suspend the season for a bit or for a while, money is going to be like an issue, because team owners is going to lose a lot of money in the revenues and everything. But I still think you should suspend the season just a little bit, just because, like, you're risking, like, the health of the players and all that, with the COVID, and everything. So, and all these outbreaks coming in, especially with the all-star players, like the people that's marketable, like, you should just, like, if I was Adam Silver, I would just tone it down just a little bit, and then maybe try to recreate the bubble down in Florida to do the rest of the season and all that, because you've seen that worked out, and people, getting tested, for the, COVID and all that every single day to let us know. So I think, they should just go back to what they did, suspend it for a bit, try to get into the bubble, try to get them teams in there. And, until, all this, kind of dies down. But, we're in the winter time now, because, a lot of people are going to get colds and everything in the winter time. But, yeah, it's kind of just crazy with all these outbreaks and all that. You just gotta, you just got to hold off on the season. I understand money is like the issue is like to everything to, the owners and everything. But, what does it take, with all these players being out and all that, I'd rather care about health than just the money and everything. So just suspend the season just a little bit if I was Adam Silver. You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I got muted on my own show, man. I'm really killing it tonight. No, I think to an extent that they should look at suspending the season. I think the NBA is really trying to push past Christmas. Like, I think they're trying to get through these Christmas games. That being said, a lot of these Christmas games are going to be missing big stars anyways. Mm-hmm. Like, do we know if Giannis is going to be good to go by Christmas? Do we know if Steph's going to be good on Christmas Day? Because, like, if you're missing out on those players, then you're kind of missing out on, like, the marketability of Christmas as a whole and the whole Christmas NBA stuff. So I think they're trying to push until Christmas. They're like, okay, if we can just get through this week. I think they look at maybe the 26th. They're like, we're shutting it down till the new year. Like we'll give it a week. Everyone just, get better and try and push through it. But yeah, it does come down to a money thing at the end of the day. The NBA doesn't want to miss games or postpone them until these outbreaks are dealt with. I think they're trying to push through, whether it's through G Leagues or we're seeing all these guys on 10-day contracts. Like, guys are like, all right, give me some shots. Let's see if I can parlay this into a contract. Like, so Mo, what do you think of the situation as a whole? Do you think it's a suspend it? Do you think this was preventable? Like what do you think the NBA should be looking at?
I mean, I don't think it was preventable, just for the simple fact. I mean, essentially the only way it's preventable is to put everybody back in the bubble. I don't think that should be on the table. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's on the table, and it shouldn't be, because like COVID is here, seems like it's here to stay. It's something we got to deal with, so we got to figure it out. They're giving rules where, if you're vaccinated and you test positive, if you can show us a negative test, you could play. I'm not opposed to that. I don't know how that works out, because then you also have to look at whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated. You still could contract COVID, and it doesn't mean just because somebody else is asymptomatic, somebody else doesn't get symptoms. So therefore, you start dealing with, are players willing to play with somebody they know just test positive yesterday because they showed a negative test today? So that gets a little tricky, but I was opposed to come Friday. It's Sunday now, so it's kind of too late, but I was opposed to come Friday, postpone the season, quarantine, or at least, as much as possible, because we know they want the NBA on Christmas. We know that's kind of the key to the thing on why they're not trying to postpone it. So allow everybody to kind of 1 week quarantine or whatever at the facility, however you do it, in home with families. And then the guys who play Christmas, check back into the facilities on Thursday, travel if need to be travel. And that's as preventable as possible, especially with the new rules on being able to test negative. Like, you give guys in home with their families, virtual meetings, virtual practice, however you want to do it at home. All these guys have access to private gyms and work out themselves. And maybe you don't get the best brand of Christmas basketball, but at the same time, that's what it seems like is the point. You don't want to cancel basketball on Christmas. So I think they should have did that Friday, had everybody check back in. And if you play on Christmas, you check back in on Thursday. You prevent us a negative test. You travel, wherever you got to go. You get there on Christmas Eve. You quarantine prior to the game. You do your shoot around, and then you play the game. And then I also say after that, you postpone it again. You allow everybody to go back to their families, virtual meetings, virtual practice, virtual workouts. You allow everybody to go back through the New Year's, come back January 2nd. Everybody get back to the facilities. After a week, everybody's back in facilities, got to spend the New Year's, the holidays with their family, get back and get going a week after New Year's. I think that would have been the perfect scenario, just because we care about Christmas. And then the next day that we really care about basketball, that's huge, that starts at 12 o'clock and goes on all day, is Martin Luther King, right? Like, that's essentially MLK. NBA on MLK is another big day. So you'll have them prepared for kind of your two most money-making days when we talk about starting at 12, ending with a late-night game. So I think to have been able to do that, you could postpone the game, extend the season a little bit. So what? You did it last year. You did it the year prior. You showed us that you can extend the season if need be. So if you want your best brand of basketball played, I felt like, come Friday, a week quarantine, get with your families, virtual workouts, virtual meetings, everything like that. If you play on Christmas Day, check in to the facility on Christmas Eve, give us a negative test. Boom, we'll travel, we'll do whatever. We'll quarantine prior to shoot around. We'll get on the flight together. We'll quarantine prior to shoot around, and then we'll get going for Christmas. After Christmas, everybody go back to the facility, travel, get with your family, quarantine there, spend New Year's, do whatever. January 2nd, check back in, give us a negative test and we'll keep business going as usual. I think that was the best idea, but they kind of screwed that one up. So we'll kind of see what goes from the NBA now. But I mean, like you said, Kenneth, you said it, JP, you said it. They're trying to play on Christmas Day. Like, that's one of their biggest money makers. Everybody going to wake up in the morning, open presents, watch basketball. That's what it is. And we also have NFL on that day. So that is a very sports head days for us fathers, us husbands, us boyfriends. Hey, y'all open y'all presents in the morning. I got the rest of the day to myself. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
I mean, that's legitimately been my Christmas the last
what it is.
6 years.
Yep. That's what it is. Hey, you open your presents. I please my family. I get the kids everything they want. I get the wife everything she wants. We enjoy the morning, a little bit of breakfast, get going. Game start at 12 o'clock, and then we have the NFL in the evening. Boom. So I satisfy everybody. Leave me alone. Let me sip on my liquor and watch NBA and NFL. So that's the money maker. That's what we do. That's tradition. That's what it is. So if you were trying to protect that, I feel like you should have paused the season right now, postpone, quarantine, be with your families, virtual workouts, virtual everything, and then get ready on Christmas Eve. NBA players who play on Christmas already have to sacrifice with their families, spending Christmas with their families anyway. So, 5 p.m. Eastern or whatever, 5 p.m. based on your time, whatever time that may be, West Coast, Central, whatever. You check into the facility, you give us a negative test, you travel if travel is necessary, and we play the game on Friday or on Saturday as normal on Christmas Day. I think that was the best solution. But like I said, probably too late for that, so they're going to try and figure it out from here.
And that's the issue, is that they've gone the route of postponing games. And it's like, okay, so all these teams that are dealing with outbreaks, because we know this isn't going to be the last postponed games. Like, with all these outbreaks happening, like, there's going to be more postponed games. So now are we punting them down the road? So then guys are now having to play tighter schedules down the stretch. We could start running into the injury issue that we had last year, which was so many games being played so closely together that guys don't have the proper amount of time to rest. And it can start affecting your postseason at the end of the day. And that's a big moneymaker for the NBA as well. So that's where I agree with Mo. If this would have been Friday, the 17th, and you say, okay, games are canceled until Christmas. You play Christmas or Boxing Day, you go home, you quarantine. We'll see you for those games. You got to provide the negative test. As soon as those games are done, go back to your family until the new year. Because let's be honest, like, I haven't been watching many NBA games the last couple of days, especially once you see all these protocol issues. It's like, okay, I'm not going to tune into this team because they're missing 9 players. Like, I saw Golden State on against Toronto last night, and it's like, the only reason why I paid attention is because I had Fred VanVleet's point total. Guess what? He hit it at halftime because he was going
had a triple-double.
So it's like, I'm not even watching at this point because we are in the holiday season. But part of the holiday season is that Christmas Day. It's MLK, Boxing Day, the 26th, watching games that day. And yeah, that's been my Christmas. You just sit there and they have like the marketability of like the Christmas jerseys and all that stuff that goes along with Christmas Day. That's why they're pushing to have these games on Christmas. And yeah, for me, it was watching 12 hours of basketball. Take care of stuff in the morning. Sit down, got a case of beer next to me, just going to watch the games. And unfortunately, I had to watch the Knicks in the first game every year for a while there, but now they're respectable. But like, I could spend an hour or two extra because the Knicks were on, and then I'd really watch the games after that. But yeah, this is the issue that they've run into. Now, what do? If you're just plowing ahead, Christmas Day games are going to be pretty dull. Like you're telling me Golden State, no Steph, no Otto Porter, no Draymond, no. Yeah, that's a real riveting game to watch on Christmas. Like we saw them go up against the Raptors, and what did they look like? A G League team. Why did they look like a G League team? Because they had G League players. And so we're missing out on Christmas in a sense because the NBA wouldn't shut it down. Like Golden State's going up against Phoenix. As of right now, Phoenix doesn't have protocol issues. So what's Phoenix going to be on Christmas? Minus 15 against Golden State's backups? And I'm probably not going to be too tuned into that game, especially when they go up big early and then the game's over. We started looking at Boston versus Milwaukee on Christmas. No Giannis potentially. That's not a great game then. Like, I know that they have the rivalry, and that's why they set it as a Christmas Day game. But part of that rivalry is having Giannis there. So if he's not ready to go, that takes away from Christmas. We got the Lakers and Brooklyn with COVID protocol issues. So the potential NBA Finals matchup that they called it at the start of the year, it's not going to be that. Like, yeah, Davis is hurt, but if the Lakers don't have a bench, then it's just LeBron and Westbrook versus maybe KD and Harden. Probably not, because they're in protocols. So this is where they've just botched it from that perspective. Like, if you're going to play on Christmas, that's fine. But now the ratings aren't going to be there. Like you're telling me on Christmas, if someone says, okay, yeah, it's Mavs and Jazz in the late slate, but there's no Donovan Mitchell because of COVID. There's no Luka because of COVID and injury and whatever. How many people are staying up to watch that game? Not many. So you're losing out on money anyways from that perspective. So we've talked about it. It's obviously been a money-driven issue. Like, owners don't want to cancel games. They lost money over the last number of years having to cancel games and having to play shortened seasons and stuff. But also for the health side of things for the players. I mean, we're just pushing ahead. And you may test negative tonight, and then tomorrow morning you test positive, but you played last night. You were around players the whole time. And we know that it's like 95% of the NBA is vaccinated, but that's still an issue. Like if just because guys aren't showing symptoms yet or haven't shown a positive test yet doesn't mean that they don't have it at the time. So we got to also look at it from a player safety standpoint, where how are we plowing ahead with this? This is absurd that we're plowing ahead with it and just saying, okay, we'll just get to Christmas. Okay, so JP said it. There's 5-6 people in protocols like last Tuesday. Now we're probably 100. There's got to be a lot in protocols. That could be double that by the time we roll around to Christmas. And then what? Then none of the players are going to get to spend time with family. They're going to be in quarantine, and that's not good for the mental health side of things. We talk about mental health all the time, and how sports organizations and that are supposed to champion that. Well, you're hurting your players from that aspect as well. So there's a lot that goes into it. I agree 100% with Mo where they should have canceled it a couple weeks ago. Just say, look, if Christmas and Boxing Day is when you want to play, then we'll try and push ahead. And hopefully we have players that are able to go then, because they've been quarantining for a week. But now I think we're going to have a pretty dull Christmas slate if we have one at all. Like, we might get to a point in the next couple days where there's so many positive tests that they're just like, we got to shut it down until the new year. Like, the NHL's already gone ahead with that. They postponed like 4 or 5 games today. No Canadian teams are crossing the border. So there's a lot of canceled games there. We've got the World Juniors here as well for the World Championships of Hockey. So, they're taking the right precautions, and I wish the NBA would have done the same thing. But it'll be interesting to monitor over the next week or so to see what players ruled out next. Like, it was Trae Young just before we came on the air here. So let's see how it ends up going on that front. But before we move on to talk a little bit more COVID, and then we're going to get into some real basketball, I want to also remind our listeners that this show is sponsored by BetUS. BetUS is the newest sponsor of the Off the Ball Network. They have the fastest payouts in the industry and offer a 125% sign-up bonus when you use the promo code OFFTHEBALL in all caps at sign-up. So head over to betus.com to sign up today. I know Mo's been live betting up a storm, as I said in the preamble. 3-0 on my NFL betting card today as well. So definitely go check out betus.com. It's a ton of fun, but make sure to bet responsibly and make sure that you're 18 plus years of age when you do it as well. Always remind the listeners of that. So Brooklyn, I wish we could talk about Brooklyn as a team, but Brooklyn doesn't really have a team right now. And that's how we got to the point of the Nets were looking at bringing back Kyrie Irving for games that weren't being played in New York. Then COVID protocols hit Kyrie, so he's now unavailable. So how do we feel about the Nets even contemplating bringing him back? Because they seem to have a firm stance at the beginning of the year, which was basically, if you're not going to get vaccinated, then you're not going to play. And now it feels like they were just going back on that because for whatever reason they felt they needed to. So Mo, I'll go to you first. Do you think it was a bad call by Brooklyn to even contemplate this? What are your thoughts on it?
No, I mean, outside what? Everybody's playing, right? Like everybody who's available to play is playing outside of Kyrie Irving. Like vaccinated or unvaccinated. I know New York has a different mandate, and I know you don't want a part-time player, but guess what? Like you trying to win the championship. That's the goal. Like it's a choice, but the goal is to win the championship. And some of Kyrie is better than none. Period. Point blank. COVID smacked the Nets hard. Kyrie comes back, goes straight into protocols as soon as so, it's one of those like, hey, based on your decision, you reap what you sow. But at the same time, like, bro, you knew this was kind of inevitable. Like the doctors were telling us that it was going to get high around this time, around flu season and this and that. So if there was even a sense of you were going to cave, then why not? You should have just caved from the jump. You would have, who knows? The fact that you would have Kyrie Irving in multiple games where we seen there was only James Harden. So you could have had Kyrie and Harden. We see multiple games where there was only KD. So you could have had KD and Kyrie. So it becomes a point where like, Kyrie won, right? He stood on his stance and Brooklyn caved first. Now, had he got vaccinated, I don't think it'd be him caving. I just think it'd be like he felt like he got enough information, made the right decision as best for him and his family. And, kudos to him. He's making the decision as best for him and his family. I can't speak on that. But Brooklyn bringing him back, it's almost like a bad look on Brooklyn. Like, you should have stood pat because Kyrie stood pat on his stance up to this point. But you're letting COVID, like, hey, everybody else is bringing in G League players and signing these extra contracts. And what you do is you allow Kyrie to play. So you basically let Kyrie win. And I know you don't want to be at a standoff with your star players, but you already said you weren't signing him to an extension, at least not right now. You'll probably wait for him to get vaccinated and see what comes forth of this season. So if he remains unvaccinated, you probably won't bring him back. So you should have stood pat. You had a stance as an organization, stand pat. Because Kyrie had a stance as a player, as an individual, and he stood pat on it. He stood on everything that he said. So salute to Kyrie. But as an organization, you came out and said, we're not going to have him play part-time. We're not believing in that. Either you're here or you're not. If you decide to not be, we're not going to crucify you. And they said, after Sean Marks came out and said what he said, nothing else was said about Kyrie from the Brooklyn side, right? Like the media wants to know, the media wants to find out, but Brooklyn said nothing else about Kyrie Irving. So stand pat. Like that's my biggest thing is they should have stood pat. They should have stood on everything that they believe, just like Kyrie did. And if it cost you a championship, whatever, you already were prepared to not bring Kyrie Irving back on a contract extension anyway. So you reap what you sow as an organization, but now like you give in, and it to me, it doesn't look bad on Kyrie at all. It looks bad on Brooklyn because you spoke publicly about how you felt, about ways you go about things as an organization. You went against everything that you publicly spoke about. So if there was even a chance of you doing anything, you should shut up from the jump.
No, I think we agree on that. JP, I'll go to you before I give my thoughts on it. So what do you think of the Brooklyn side? What do you think of it just as a whole?
I 100% agree with Mo because it just looks so bad for Brooklyn because, like you said, they had a firm stance of, we're not going to let Kyrie Irving play because he's unvaccinated. We ain't going to let him be a part-time player. What happened? Everybody getting these COVID protocols. You bring back Kyrie for desperation, because you needed another player on the roster. And you say, oh, he can be a part-time player. So you kind of destroy your words and your promises early in the season by bringing him back and everything. And I feel like they were just desperate because they want to win the championship this year, as a healthy team and all that. Because, we've been hearing like rumblings and stuff, on like ESPN and all that. It's like they ain't going to win the championship without Kyrie Irving, KD can do everything he could, but with him just playing himself, by himself and all that, James Harden kind of getting back into the rhythm and flow. But, they needed like that third person, that option, just in case one of them goes out, which is Kyrie Irving. So you kind of just promise yourself to be back in the stance like, well, we're not going to let him play. So you basically let Kyrie win. Like Kyrie's just holding like an award saying, I stand by my ground, I stand by this, and you let him win. So they felt so desperate just to bring him back and everything because I just know, mentally they're like, we can't win without him and everything. And then all these COVID protocols and all that. You could have got some G League players. You could have got an Isaiah Thomas. You could have got, some other G League players. But you was like, well, we're not going to sign him to an extension. So it's like, okay, we'll bring back Kyrie and see what happens, So it's a really bad look for Brooklyn because I don't think they don't know what they're doing in that front office. I think they're just very desperate just to find ways to, win, get in the playoffs, getting into the finals, and to win the championship, because it's just not looking good right now for Brooklyn.
That's my whole thing about this, is that they were going to bring him back because they were concerned about losing games. Like, everything was all fine and good when Harden and KD are playing. They're the 1 seed in the East. Everything looks great. Like, I respect the state mandate. I respect Kyrie's stance. I respect all that stuff. But I don't respect Brooklyn at all from that standpoint. Because, as you said, look at all these other teams that are out signing G League players. They're finding ways to field a roster. Like, Golden State didn't do it. I mean, look at who they started against Toronto. It didn't look pretty, but they went out and brought in G League players for that game. And they started a guy like Jonathan Kuminga, who goes and has like a career night as a rookie.
Yes.
Like, that's what you could be using this for as well. Like, hey, Cam Thomas, who we drafted in the first round, go play 40 minutes. And we'll surround you with G Leaguers. Like, but this is your time to shine. Like go and show us that you can be that guy in the future. And, they've got Patty Mills out there. But I just don't respect Kyrie's not going to play at all this year because we don't want a part-time player. Boom, COVID hits. You look like you're going to start losing some games, maybe lose your 1 seed. And then you're like, okay, well, we got to bring him back now. And it's like, okay, well, what was the problem from the start then? Like if Kyrie follows other states' mandates, being unvaccinated, presenting a negative test, going through probably additional COVID protocols in order to play, then he should be allowed to play then. Like, yeah, he can't play within New York because that's the rules there. But that's my issue with it, is that they've folded now, and you've just opened yourself up where like you can't go back now. Like you really can't. So what are you going to say now? Okay, well, now that our roster's healthy, we don't need you, Kyrie. Okay, so it was fine for him to play before, not in New York, but fine for him to play on the road, and now it's just supposed to be all fine and good. That's my issue with it. I don't like it from a Nets perspective. I don't think that they're a very well-run team to begin with. Like, it feels like patchwork the way that they've done it. It's almost like they assembled this big three in their lap, and then they're like, okay, what do we do with it now? Because it was basically just Kyrie and KD decided we're going there. And then they jumped at the chance to trade for James Harden. And now I think you're starting to see that dysfunctional a little bit within this organization. So, yeah, I don't like the stance from the Nets. I think it's very weak on their part. If they don't plan on bringing back Kyrie because of his vaccination status, fine. But I mean, I just think it's a very bad look on them, the way that they've handled the whole situation. So we're going to close things out by talking about my Los Angeles Lakers, who looked better until Minnesota. And then, Anthony Davis now out the next 6 weeks. So we talked about COVID. That's an issue with the Lakers right now. They've got some players. I know Avery Bradley and a few others have to go through those protocols now. So they're going to be shorthanded. They play tonight. So we'll see how things look tonight. But right when it looked like LA might be starting to see the corner, they haven't turned the corner, but they were starting to see the corner, then Anthony Davis goes down. So Mo, I'll start with you. What do you think of the Lakers? What do you think their expectation should be over these next 6 weeks? Losing a guy like Anthony Davis, who wasn't necessarily playing that great, but he's still a part of that big three.
The Lakers are fried. They're done. I'm sorry, Kenneth. I love LeBron. So, to have to say this and really realize the possibility that LeBron's going to end his career and with 4 championships, I wanted him to get 5, possibly 6. Forget the GOAT argument. I just want my guy LeBron to have the utmost success. And once he got Anthony Davis, I thought that was it. This Anthony Davis experiment is essentially probably going to look like it failed, right? Because LeBron didn't bring in AD to win 1 championship. That's not what he did. He brought AD in right as he was entering his prime for LeBron to be the best player that year. And they won the championship. They won the COVID championship. We can take away, but guess what? When LeBron retires, AD retires, they got that championship that year. I don't care nothing about it. We can discredit all championships if we want to. I'll start digging deep into everybody's favorite player championship if we want to do that. But it was about the fact that LeBron went, and we could say LeBron, whatever. The Lakers went and got a guy who was entering his prime, which typically means your prime is what? 5 to 7 years. from about 27 to 33. So I'll range there 26 to 33. Anywhere between those 5 to 7 years, you hit your prime, which means that is at the point where you play the best basketball of your life. That is where LeBron played the best basketball of his life. That's essentially where Kevin Durant is continuing, but has played the best basketball of his life. Steph Curry, even though he's playing absolutely amazing right now, still just goes to show sometimes guys' prime is longer than others. But still, that's the best version of themselves that we go to. Them 5 to 7 years, those are your Hall of Fame years, regardless of early success or early failure. Your Hall of Fame years fall in them 5 to 7 years, from 26 to 33. And so AD's been hurt. He won a championship since then, injury prone. He was already injury prone prior. He's been injury prone since. They won a championship. He doesn't seem like he's been getting better. This is a guy that when they acquired him, we're talking about a top 5 player now. Like, AD's probably not in most people's top 10. Is he a top 5 talent? Sure, but does he show us that every night? No, so therefore he's not a top 10 player. There's about 10 guys you would take, especially when you start talking about injuries. So it's kind of blown up in their face, and you can blame LeBron or whatever, but it was never a bad move to acquire AD. So, but the goal was not one championship and then fizzle out and be a first round knockout. Like, the goal was that whenever LeBron decides to retire, we still have a superstar to continue to build around, convinced to come to LA, which isn't that hard. It's the Lakers, a winning organization. It's the city of Los Angeles, a lovely city. You know, it's Hollywood. It's where everybody dreams of going. Everybody who's not from Cali want to take a trip to Cali and get out there to Southern Cal and, you know, go see LA. So it's failed at this point. I mean, AD, bro, he falls and everybody's eyes get big. And he falls almost every game and everybody's eyes get big. And so now he's out 4 to 6 weeks. We've seen how much they were struggling without LeBron. I expect them to struggle just as much without Anthony Davis because the Westbrook-LeBron fit never fit in the first place. You know, that's the one time I ding LeBron on like, bro, you're an idiot. You should have went and got Buddy Hield. I don't know what you're doing. You know the recipe to success. I don't know. Russell Westbrook was the name. You hope you guys could fit together. I think LeBron kind of grabbed him hoping that like I'm the guy who could get get Westbrook to the promised land. I could be the guy. He's played with Kevin Durant. He's played with James Harden. He's played with Paul George and Carmelo Anthony. And he's like, you know what? I could be the guy to get Westbrook a championship. Everybody wouldn't blame him. Come with me. And it would build up to LeBron's legacy at the end of the day because you would also remember, like, nobody else could do it, but LeBron could do it. He wanted to be that. And so it's not panning out. The Lakers are kind of on a downhill. I mean, 6 weeks, that's a long time without your second best player, third best player, especially when your next 2 best players, LeBron and Westbrook aren't fitting. We don't think they kind of essentially have the same role on the floor. LeBron, I guess, to a higher level. So I think it's going to turn into a dumpster fire. Now everybody in LA is going to start blaming Frank Vogel, rightfully so. This is supposed to be a defensive team, and they're not great defensively. So I think you start looking at Frank Vogel. His job's in jeopardy. I think he makes it through the year. I mean, there's no really candidates out there that you fire Vogel for. David Fizdale has failed. So, that's LeBron's guy. So I guess that would be his ideal fill as the interim coach. Have a head coaching job if the Lakers could turn it around. But you start looking at Vogel, you start looking at LeBron and start coming to the realization LeBron is at literally the end of his career. You start looking at Westbrook is a great player who's going to go down historically but never win the championship, going to be known solely for his triple-doubles. And you start looking at Anthony Davis, who might be he might be that what if. He might be that Tracy McGrady. He might be that Yao Ming, essentially. Yao Ming injuries hinder the longevity of his career. So, even D-Wade, we feel like D-Wade's career still was cut short, even though it was great. He won multiple championships and everything like that, but we felt like his prime could have been longer because of injuries. Derrick Rose, we felt like that we didn't even get to see a prime D Rose because of injuries. And I think that's Anthony Davis. He's been hurt every year since entering his prime, so it's not looked promising. I think the Lakers should be very concerned. And we know how this gets. When a LeBron-led team gets very concerned, they start making a bunch of trades.
Mm-hmm.
The trade deadline is going to be the Lakers' bread and butter. We know it. It's going to happen. They're going to make some trade. I don't know who for what. We talk about trade packages all day long for another hour, but we know how when LeBron-led teams get into panic mode, we know a lot of roster moves are going to be made. So I guess I'm just going to sit back and see what LeBron has cooking up his sleeve, if anything, or if he starts making desperation moves.
For sure. So, JP, I'll go to you before I close out the show, but what do you think of the Lakers?
Yeah, the Lakers are in trouble, just like Mo said. I think it's a blessing in disguise for Anthony Davis just to, sit back and just look at the injury and then have to, reevaluate himself of how he can get back and how he could dominate and, play like, he should be playing like a top 5 player. So I think it's a blessing in disguise itself. So you're depending on Westbrook and LeBron to carry this team. Where they always had problems with the defense this year. You're looking at that roster, that roster they have, it's not really a great roster, Pelinka and LeBron coming up with it, because you don't really have that much defensive guys, and your bread and butter is defense. Frank Vogel's not doing a great job with the rotations. With him and COVID protocols, we'll see how fits they'll coach and everything the next couple games. But yeah, they're just gonna go down. They're going downhill. They're going downhill quickly because the Warriors, the Suns, the Jazz, even the Clippers are much better teams than the Lakers are, and it's just going to be tough for him. It's just going to be tough for him because LeBron can't. As much as I love LeBron, he ain't going to see another championship. The longevity of him taking over quarters is not going to work because he's getting older now. So you really have to depend on Westbrook to carry that team. Try to do something. To push the pace and push the tempo. You sign Isaiah Thomas. I feel like that's just a feel good story. But he came in.
He's starting for them tonight.
Yeah,
too, by the
and
way.
he scored 19 points against the Minnesota, but they still don't get it. It's like you need some defense,
Yeah.
I guess they try to get someone that can score consistently because they can't really score consistently when you look at that team. So yeah, I just think they're in so much trouble, but I think it's a blessing in disguise for Anthony Davis to really reevaluate himself because we've been kind of hard on him because we expect him to be like a top 5 player and he's not living up to the expectations. And this whole LeBron Anthony Davis experiment, it's failing right now because we're thinking they could win like 1, 2, 3 championships, and it's just not living up to it.
Yeah, like my worry with the Lakers was at like a 20% prior to AD getting hurt, and now it's up to about a 40. Like I'm starting to get to that point as a fan where I'm very worried about it. A couple points that Mo made are why I'm not off the Lakers entirely yet. The first of which is LeBron, the GM, because let's face it, when the Lakers won the championship, why did they win the championship? They were one of the best defensive teams in the league, and they're not playing like it because they thought that they could just go and fill it with all these free agent vet minimum guys. None of those vet minimum guys play defense. So that's why their defense has gone to shit, basically. Like, that's why you couldn't bring in another Russell Westbrook type contract. You could have went and got a Buddy Hield type contract, saved yourself the $10 million, went and got a couple quality free agents, and they just didn't do it. So I'm holding off until I see what LeBron, the GM, actually does. Because if they can go out and add a couple guys defensively and they can start to lock in on that end, then I'm not entirely out on the Lakers. But that being said, I mean, this next 6 weeks is going to be really telling because they've got a lot of winnable games on their schedule, but they've also got a lot of very difficult games. Mm-hmm. Like we're talking about them playing Chicago tonight, Phoenix next game. Depending what Brooklyn team they get on Christmas, those are all in their next 3 out of 4 games. Then you've got a lot of the Sacramentos, the Pelicans. Those are the games that you have to look at where, like, look, the Lakers lost to OKC twice already. So those aren't even wins, which at the start of the year would be crazy to say that the Lakers can't go out and beat the Kings and the Thunder. So, yeah, I'm starting to get concerned as a fan. I'm not entirely out on them yet. And the experiment is a failure if it results in one championship. Like, when LeBron went there on a 4-year deal, it was meant to be he wins multiple. Like that's what you do. Like, Lakers fans are not content with one championship. When they get championships, they come in bunches. And so that's why I think it could be ruled a failure down the road when it comes to the Lakers. But I'm going to reserve my judgment to see if they can start to figure this out. Without Anthony Davis, it's going to be very telling over the next 6 weeks. If they can even go slightly above 500 over that stretch, then I think they'll be in a great spot with him coming back. But it is starting to give me that 03-04 Lakers vibes. I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but it is starting to give me those vibes nonetheless. So Guys, I want to thank you so much for coming on Breaking the Game tonight. You know, we had a great discussion overall about a lot of great topics. So, JP, where can the folks find your work at home?
Yes, and then one more thing before I get into the works. Looking at last year, the Lakers without Anthony Davis, they were 19-17. So we'll see what happens. But you can check out my work on YouTube. It's just JP. Subscribe. A lot of basketball content coming and everything. Thankful for almost getting to 1,300 subs. So you can check me out on my YouTube channel. It's just JP. And also check out offtheballnetwork.com. All your sports news, articles, podcasts, everything you need on Off the Ball Network. These guys are killing it right now. We have the best sports content. And check out our YouTube of Off the Ball Network. A lot of recaps, a lot of shows, great shows. So definitely watch and subscribe down below. And also follow me on my Twitter, JPFranchise57. Kind of put out a tweet earlier today to the NBA cancel games and, just trying to talk hoops. So
appreciate it, JP. You're a great guest as always. Mo, where can the folks find your work at home?
Yeah, you can find me at Up in Flames Pod on Twitter, Instagram, _cheese15 on Twitter, Instagram. Got a bunch of things coming. Just always talking football, basketball, whatever. See you Sunday on Saturdays at 11 a.m. Eastern. Overreaction Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern, over there, Off the Ball Network. And, like JP said, just go to offtheballnetwork.com, kind of for all your sports season entertainment. Subscribe to everybody's Substack. Off the Ball's kind of kicking off a Substack. So just make sure you check all that out because we do great work, and we're slowly but surely reaching our way to the top.
Definitely. Go check out offtheballnetwork.com. We've got big things coming January 1 as far as the website and all the articles that go along with that. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. And yeah, just go follow me on all social platforms at shooters_pod and follow the Breaking the Game account as well at BTG NBA pod as well. Guys, thanks so much for coming on once again. And thank you to everyone who tuned into the live show. And this has been the Breaking the Game show on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash